There were several factors that led to the motivation of the Meiji Restoration. The Japanese people knew that they were behind in the world. When they saw the massive warships that Commodore Matthew Perry came to the island in, they knew they needed to change. They could not be a world power or threat with the current weak technology they possessed. The Meiji's goal was to combine these Western advances with the traditional ideas of their culture to innovate their society into a global power. The Meiji took control of Japan after the Tokugawa shogunate ended in 1868. The Meiji Restoration, or Revolution, refers to the events that restored imperial rule to Japan. It also impacted Japan's political and social structures. The Meiji Restoration progressed industrialization in Japan so rapidly that it was able to become a military dominance by 1905. They used the Meiji slogan, "Enrich the country, strengthen the military," to motivate them. The Meiji created an oligarchy under the rule of the emperor. However, eventually, these few ruling classes were convinced into giving back their domains to the emperor. After the Meiji Restoration, Japan no longer feared that they would be imperialized. Instead, they set out to imperialize others. By using Western techniques, Japan was able to quickly become a world power while upholding their traditional culture.
After the Meiji transformation in Japan, the Japanese were very protective of their land and did not want it to fall to Western powers. The leaders felt that the only way to avoid this was to expand and to conquer more lands around the area. Mainly, this idea came from Yamagata Arimoto, who said that the island must be surrounded by a sphere of influence to increase power. There was a decision to use military efforts to gain more land area and power. The Japanese went to war with China over the Taiwan and Liaodong Peninsula and eventually won after the 6-month Sino-Japanese War in 1895. This takeover advanced the name of Japan and made it known worldwide as a major imperialist. Japan and Russia then fought over the mineral-rich Chinese province of Manchuria and the rest of the Koreas. And in 1905, Japan defeated Russia in the Russo-Japanese War by signing the Treaty of Portsmouth, gaining all of Korea and a small part of Manchuria. Later on, after the fall of the Meiji, Japan gained control of all of Manchuria in 1931.
American imperialism was prominent in the Caribbean and Central America and Latin America. The nations in the Caribbean and Central America were very poor, and their governments were unstable, corrupt, and bankrupt. The situation made it easy for foreign interference and invasion. Nations would borrow money to build railroads, harbors, electric power, and other symbols of modernity. Then, when the governments could not repay the debts, the lending banks would threaten to intervene. Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, and William Taft all felt compelled to intervene. However, they all differed in the manner in which they thought was best. Roosevelt encouraged friendly efforts. Wilson wanted to impose clean governments through military means, and Taft wanted to influence the nations using their debt to the banks. The Monroe Doctrine was introduced, which gave rights to the United States to defend the entire Western Hemisphere from foreign intervention, but did not prevent the U.S. from intervening in Latin American affairs. After liberating Cuba from Spain, the United States forced Cuba to accept an amendment that gave the United States the right to intervene in an effort to maintain order on the island. The United States then continued to occupy Cuba militarily for years. After the Spanish-American War, U.S. warships destroyed the Spanish fleet occupying the Philippines, and the U.S. Navy sank the Spanish fleet off the coast of Santiago, Cuba. Spain then made a deal with the United States. As a peace offering, Spain sold the Philippines. America also took Puerto Rico and Guam as collateral. Annexation of Hawaii by the U.S. occurred as a result of the USS Maine being blown up and thus causing the U.S. entrance into the Spanish-American War. The warships needed a Pacific fueling location, and Hawaii was the optimum choice.
There are many similarities between American imperialism and the Japanese imperialism. Both countries used military efforts to gain more land and power in their area. They also went to war over one or more nations. Both countries tried to conquer areas near their central location to increase their sphere of influence. But America annexed places like Hawaii for military purposes and special ports, but Japan conquered just to gain more territory.
From the 18th to 19th centuries, the Ottoman and Russian empires both declined.
Their declines, when compared, are intriguingly similar, although they still have their differences.
The Ottoman and Russian government were unstable.
This is because of the large area they had to control and the multiple ethnic backgrounds they had to please.
Both empires were late on industrializing.
By the time Russia even began to modernize, Europe was already significantly ahead in their own industrial revolution.
The Ottoman Empire had some government problems that led them to become weak and not powerful. The social structure was not fit for a free market system needed for better trade and industrializing. At the top of the Ottomans' class structure were the doctors and scientists. Right under them were the soldiers, followed by merchants and tax collectors. At the bottom of the society were the farmers and herders. With the change in trade routes, the Ottoman Empire lost its main source of income. The economy began to plummet. The society placed too much power in the hands of the farmers when it came to earnings. The Ottoman state was no match for its neighboring states.
With the Russian Empire, the major contributing factor to its decline was the effects of World War I on the people, land, and economy. This weakened the empire even more than it already was. Another reason for the decline was the immense debt that Russia was in. At one point, the Russian Empire had the most debt in the world, facing internal conflicts because their provinces were trying to secede from the empire against the monarchy and replaced it with a provisional government.